Welcome to the Office Latte Podcast, where we go beyond the boardroom to explore new conversations on life and career. I'm Erin Kennedy, CEO of Professional Resume Services, and wife, mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and friend. Now, let's dive in. Welcome to another edition of Office Latte Podcast.
Hello, how's it going, Erin?
It's fabulous. Fabulous. And today we're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to both of our hearts for different reasons. So our guest today is, I'm just saying, we just dive right in. Let's just dive in and talk about him right now. Sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay. So our guest today is David Hannan. So I met him, and we'll probably get more into this in the episode, but met him on LinkedIn. You know, he just kind of took LinkedIn by storm. You know, all of a sudden I saw him everywhere, and, you know, he's a career coach, a former New York City recruiter. So I'm going to read his bio. Job search is overwhelming, especially with ADHD. So David is a career coach, but recently, and which we'll get into the conversation more, he realized and was diagnosed with ADHD. So I've been following his journey, which has just been fascinating, and really kind of getting into that. So he talks about the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the overthinking is exhausting, and that's where David comes in. He's a career coach helping ADHD professionals navigate job searches with clarity and confidence. With over 20 years in recruiting, including leading a $4 million tech team in New York City, he knows what gets candidates hired. After his 2024, so this is recent, after his 2024 ADHD and PTSD diagnosis, he set out to help others thrive in a system not built for them. His coaching business focused on cutting through the chaos, embracing imperfection, and moving forward. So I am so excited. And, you know, I know people that have ADHD. I know I have friends with kids. Lots of friends with kids with ADHD, and also people who have been diagnosed later, like in their 20s or 30s or 40s.
Yeah, no, that's a huge, I'm like really curious to hear about that side of his story as someone who's also has ADHD. I wouldn't necessarily say I was diagnosed later, obviously, compared to him, but compared to most like women and kids, we see ADHD as this like kid diagnosis, when in reality, it doesn't go away when you're an adult. You know, and I think that's what society kind of tells us. And what we actually see in a lot of women is late diagnosis. Not until they're in their 20s do they really get diagnosed. And that was my story. So I'm really excited. We've been kind of like talking about getting someone on here in the ADHD space. So I'm really excited to hear everything.
I am too. And I did talk to him a little bit one-on-one, and he has so much to offer. And just hearing his story is so moving. So let's dive in. Hi, David.
Erin, how are you, my friend?
I am fabulous. I am so glad that you agreed to come on this podcast. You know, I've been a huge fan. I've been fangirling over you for a long time, ever since you just popped onto LinkedIn and kind of took over and just started with all your brilliant advice. So I wanted to ask you some questions first about your background. And so you were in recruiting for a while.
I was in recruiting for probably about maybe close to like 18 years in total. Can I just say, though, I was fanboying around you for probably longer than you were fanning around me. So I thank you for the compliment.
We're just mutual fans.
It means a lot. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of yours. So yeah, as the saying goes in the recruiting space, or specifically on the agency side, you fall into it. And I think it's, you know, I talk about dream adjacent jobs every now and again. And I think, you know, I was in a dream adjacent job back then. If I was close to recruiting, but I was on the internal corporate side. Yeah. And I'm going to age myself, but it was in the back of the newspaper in the classified. Someone had posted this, you know, recruitment for recruitment. And I had no idea what that even meant. So I called and got an interview with this recruiter that placed recruiters at agencies. And long story short, I got this interview with this small 6-person agency in Birmingham, England. And I just hit it off. And I was there for 2 years and really enjoyed it. There was something about the obvious, right? Helping people who are out of work get into work, and conversely, helping those people that were in a job but weren't too happy to move on. So yeah, I fell into it. I think like a lot of people.
Yeah. And so then, so you worked with some big tech companies as well. I mean, and so you placed people in tech, is that right?
Yeah. So funny story, and I'll come full circle. So when I first got into, so that little agency that I worked at in Birmingham, England, they were a tech agency. So all of my clients were physically located in the south of England, and they were all tech firms, but they were all American tech firms. And I learned a lot about technology. I learned a lot about recruiting. I learned a lot about business development and relationship building. Back then it was in person. LinkedIn wasn't even a thing back then. So a lot of in-person trade shows, things like that, which were really fun. And then the dot-com bubble burst around mid to late 2001. And we went from really thriving to closing the doors within about 6 months. So fast forward to 2015 when I joined Green Key here in New York, and I joined their office support team, placing C-level executive personal assistants for about 3 years, and then someone who'd ran their internal tech group left, and I saw this opening, and I was like, this could be my road into running a team, which really interested me, and also getting back into tech. So yeah, I worked my way back into tech, and so my last 2 years at Green Key were running their permanent tech division, which was a lot of fun. Massive learning curve on the management side. I don't know if it was for me, to be honest, but yeah, I worked with a ton of tech firms. But here in New York City, it's, tech, financial services, and real estate pretty much were the three markets that I worked in. But yeah, a lot of fun.
Okay, so you were in recruiting for a long time, and then you transitioned into career coaching. So how did that come about? I love all these stories. It's how people.
I'm just getting like flashbacks of certain conversations, because I think some of these conversations that I remember vividly were probably the most impactful. So to keep this brief, because it is a long story, and I'll keep this brief. So towards the end of my time at Green Key, I had this naive, and I'm going to underline that word. I had this naive notion that I could do better by the candidate. And what I mean by that is, I'd worked on the agency side for a long time, and candidates and job seekers, they just, they were always dealt the worst hand. They weren't really treated very well. And I think there was this softer side of me that kind of took a beating on that. It was like, I wanted them to have a better shot, whatever that shot may have been, whether it had been, meeting a recruiter or getting some feedback or someone going out of the way to give them resume advice. So I naively thought, I'm going to leave Green Key, I'm going to start my own agency. And I did. And I had my own one-person agency for about a year and a half. I had an office in WeWork in Midtown New York City. And I was doing pretty well. And then COVID hit. March 5th, 2020 was my last ever day in New York City as a full-time employee.
Wow.
So I came home, and my wife was probably 5 months pregnant at the time. And, we were super paranoid, and was like, let's stay at home. Then the lockdown happened. Yeah, we had a baby that first year. So I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And, recruiting was always I use the word respectfully, always the easy option, because I knew I was good at it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it to an extent. Yeah. I was never really keen on the business development side. I'm going to be really honest. So if anyone watches this that remembers me from my recruiting days, I did not like cold calling clients. You called me on it. You always knew. If my old bosses are watching, yes, you were right. I hated that part, but I tried to do it. But I didn't enjoy it. So I started my own agency. I was like, well, now I have to. So I kind of got through that block, and I was doing pretty well. COVID hit, and as you obviously know, the hiring market dried up. Agencies were not being called for any hiring needs anymore. So I was actually out camping one weekend with a friend of mine, and she owned 3 businesses of her own. We were sat around a campfire, and we were just chit-chatting, catching up. And I asked her about one of her companies. And I said, hey, are you still involved in this part of the business? She's like, I actually closed it. And I said, why? Weren't you doing really well? She says, towards the end, it kind of started drying up. And then she said this, And as a business owner, I had to make a business decision. And and I was kind of in that mindset, like, the recruiting orders are slowing down. I'm not really making the money that the pipeline's kind of slow. So it hit me. And I got home that next morning, said to my wife, I'm like, I need to close it. I need to close it down. Like I need to push ego or, sunk cost fallacy, move on. Yeah. So I had a mentor at the time, and I was speaking to them about what to do next. And they asked me this following question, which I ask all my clients when I meet them, either in person or I ask them at some stage of like the qualifying back and forth. And I always ask if there was something about, what's the one thing about your career so far that you would miss the most if you couldn't do it next? And I had a knee-jerk response, and it was working with job seekers, working with candidates. It was something that I truly, that's the only thing that really fed me. The money was great, but it was helping them that really fed me, kind of like fed that, empathetic side of me more than anything. Yeah. So we went into the whole, what's available to someone like me with my experience, and lo and behold, here I am, right? So, and you were very kind in saying that I kind of appeared out of nowhere and now I'm everywhere. You were. I thank you for saying that. I sometimes feel that way, but I definitely don't let it go to my head. I had someone DM me a couple of days ago and said, hey, you just passed 50,000 followers. I was like, what? Because I don't really pay attention to those numbers, really. I know it's there. I'm not trying to be, coy about it, but
right.
I'm not here for that. I'm not here for the numbers. So anyway, to answer your question, moving into coaching, career coaching specifically, felt right. It felt right.
Yeah, I hear you. I know. I always think, for me, I I am in the perfect place for me. I love writing and I love helping people, and that was always, I thought I had the dream job, I get to help people and write. So
your writing's amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
I love your content.
Thank you very much. So you're going along this path, you're doing your thing. And last year you get diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
How did this happen? And PTSD. So how did well, especially with ADHD, how did this happen? What came to the point where you were like, okay, I've got to go talk to somebody I know that what I've been feeling all these years is what happened? How did that happen?
It's a really good question. I'm going to give you the heartfelt response, because I think that might resonate with you and maybe those that are watching this. So what really happened, I guess the turning point for me was started about 6 years ago, Erin. So I was I don't think I've ever shared this publicly on a podcast or a live anything before, but I was an alcoholic for a long, long time. And it would be on the 26th of February, so was it 19th today? So 1 week from today, it'll be 7 years I've been sober.
Congratulations.
So, and thank you. And it was around that time that my wife and I decided, let's get serious about a family, because, if not now, then when?
Right.
Right. So I remember an appointment that my wife was at, and I joined her on every single appointment. And there was one appointment, and I was just getting frustrated because we were trying this one method 3 times. And I turned around and I said, hold on a minute, Doc. Surely there's something I can do to improve our odds. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, no, what you've got is what you've got. It's more about the mom. And I don't know what it was. Looking back now, I'm thinking that it was just me jumping to like, how dare you, kind of like Britishism. But I thought, I think you're wrong. So I got home, and one of the first things I did was I went to the freezer, which is where I used to keep my Tito's on ice. Oh, yeah. And I poured it down the sink. And I turned to my wife and said, that's it. Surely me not drinking might be able to help us. And so it started there.
Oh, wow.
Then we were lucky enough to get, lucky enough she was, able to get pregnant in end of 2019. We had a baby in 2020. And so fast forward to last year. So I got diagnosed in August. I want to say like spring, maybe even at the start of 2024. I was having these now I know the correct terminology, emotional dysregulation. And if anyone's watching who has ADHD, who's been diagnosed or is thinking about a diagnosis but have, sought medical or professional guidance, that term might be familiar. And I never really heard those two words together. Emotional dysregulation. I was like, what does that mean? So this kind of, I couldn't control my emotions, basically, Erin. And it, as a father at, I'm 53 in a couple of weeks. So I became a dad at 48. It's pretty late in life. So I had all this, all my bad habits and the ways that I used to do things kind of ingrained in me. So now having a young one running around, it changed everything, and you have to change. And I think because of my age, it was a little harder for me to change, and that kind of grated or went against my ability to regulate my emotions. So I started feeling anxious, feeling angry for the first time ever. And I'd just outburst a couple of times, and like immediately was like, oh my gosh, like what did I just do? Right. And I spoke, my wife and I are very close, and I asked us, like, I need to see someone. I don't like the way I feel. Yeah. So thankfully, I feel privileged that I had access to a healthcare system that allowed me to find help fast. I got lucky that I was referred to an incredible psychologist who specialized in ADHD and other areas like that.
Did you know this at the time? Sorry, did you know this? Like you were referred to this person who specialized in that. So at that point,
I'm going to name drop. Can I name drop? Because there were two people, and maybe they'll see this. I hope they do, because they deserve some recognition. So Thomas Woodhams and Clay Gill, who are both on LinkedIn. If you don't follow them and you have ADHD or you think you're struggling, follow them. I followed Clay. I actually stalked in the shadows Clay and Thomas's content, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. They both have shared publicly, and they openly discuss their own challenges with ADHD. And so I just kind of like, from the shadows, kind of like listened in, much like yours or my clients will kind of like, check us out for a little while, see if that we're real. And I took away a lot of knowledge and it was very educational following them. And it was their sharing their story that gave me the courage to seek an answer to my own. Yeah. So my diagnosis was over 2 or 3 sessions. It's, it's not some online checkbox that you do, which I did, like 3 or 4 times. But I knew I struggled with some of the things that Clay and Thomas had constantly discussed openly. Their content gave me the courage to maybe I need to go and see somebody. But that, coupled with the fact that I didn't like how I felt inside in those stressful times. So after, a few sessions, I was diagnosed with ADHD and PTSD. I was treated for my PTSD first. Looking back, I'm so grateful that my doc played it by the numbers. She said, for someone who's never been on meds, I don't want to try you on too. Let's work on the PTSD first. So we worked on that for about 3 months, and it really helped. And then started on medication, which was in itself a journey. But it's, it's been 9 months now, Erin. And, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about ADHD specifically. I have the inattentive type. There are 3 types. There's hyperactive, inattentive, and combined. And I have inattentive. I was never a kid bouncing off the school walls, but I was the kid who would stare out of windows. I was the kid that my attention would just drift off in physics or math or anything that I wasn't interested in. Right. And then by the time I came back, I'd see, other kids like copying in their homework. I'm like, what did I miss? And then I went into this kind of spiral of, I'm dumb, I'm stupid. It was so a lot of people are watching this are probably nodding away. Like, yeah. Oh, that was me. And it's like, so 52 years old, diagnosed. And my only regret was not being able to identify some of those challenges sooner. I don't blame my parents. I don't blame anyone. I think, it's easy to blame, right? And I think as an older person, dare I say wiser, I think as an older person and as also a dad, because as a parent, we get taught a lot of additional life lessons, patience being one of them. So I don't blame anyone, Erin. It's easy to kind of blame parents or, blame the 70s because I was born in the 70s, but it is what it is. Can't turn back the clock. But what I can do is, give my daughter and my wife someone more pleasant to be around. And that was like my biggest motivator. It wasn't really about, I wanted to feel better about me. But I remember in that conversation with my wife, I said, I don't want my daughter to hate me when she's older. Or to say to a friend, my daddy's always angry. I could feel it right now, even telling you that. It's like, it's, she's 5 and she's very impressionable. And I want to be a happy dad, a goofy dad, a silly dad who gets his nails painted. And, I wish I had hair so then she could curl it for me. But you know what I'm talking about. I just wanted to be, I went real deep there, didn't I? Sorry. So I wanted to be a happier person, Erin. Yes, for me, but also I wanted to be happier for people that I care about. So it was a big surprise, but I'm grateful. Super grateful. Perfect. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And so looking back, I mean, what were some signs of ADHD in your career that made sense only after your diagnosis, that maybe you were like, oh, I can see why I was better at this or not as great at this because of this? I mean, did you have certain points where you've looked back and thought, oh yeah, I see why I did that or why I didn't
recruiting.
do that?
So if anyone's watching this who's a recruiter who thinks they have ADHD, recruiting I use this word respectfully, it felt so easy to me. There's no such thing as an easy job, but recruiting felt easy to me because there were so many moving parts all at the same time. And it was like a mirror of my brain. Oh. And I'm really good at pattern identification. I'm really good at, 20 spinning plates at one time. I'm really good at managing multiple small tasks. And that's what recruiting is. Yeah. And at any given time, I might have, and I run a full desk as an agency recruiter too, which might be worth mentioning. So I would work the client and the candidate at the same time. So I was privy to the entire process from start to scratch, which is, harder, but way more fun. So having all those moving parts felt really natural to me. So looking back, I'm thinking to myself, I kind of liked that frenetic desk I had. Yes. So when it was slow, I'd check out real quick. Yeah. I think the very nature of that job that I had for so long, it's like my longest career ever. So having that busy, always on, and I was, then BlackBerry came out around the time I was at Career Group. So then it was like, now I'm like that all the way through bedtime. Yeah. Which we know is not a healthy option, but and back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, go. I was just saying it's recruiting for me was like the perfect, if this is right, it was like the perfect job for someone with my type of brain.
Yeah. ADHD. I love that.
Even now, may I just say, so even now diagnosed, I just want to, and maybe you're going to ask me this question, and I hope that I'm not stealing one of your questions on your list, but even on medication, I want people to realize, and again, I want to make these statements. I'm not a medical professional. Medication works for different people differently. But I will say this in my own experience, medication hasn't made me less able to handle 20 tasks at once. That was my fear. I thought medication is going to turn me into a zombie. And it didn't. It just leveled out my thoughts, and it turned, whatever analogy you want to use. So if I had 20 squirrels in my brain, all shouting for attention, they're now quiet. They're still there, running around, but there's no noise. So that's what medication's done for me. So
great analogy. Yeah. The squirrels are still there, but they're tame. They're quiet.
They're sitting down. They're in comfy chairs watching
Bluey. A show. Yeah, Bluey. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So for people with ADHD, so I just want to go back and say, I love your title in LinkedIn, ADHD sensitive job coach. That just is so, I don't know. I just love that because it shows your personality. It shows your empathy. Okay. So jumping forward with people with ADHD, in the job search, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
or, overwhelm. And I know those are two different things, but, what advice would you give somebody with ADHD to help them move past self-doubt, with that imposter syndrome, 'cause you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, I still have imposter syndrome right now. I'll let the secret, the cat out of the bag. Before we went live, I shared with you how nervous I was being on this call with you. And it's all about expectation, Erin. And this is my first ever video podcast. So not knowing really what to expect,
I'm so
I
glad you
then
came
kind
on.
of spiral into an area of unknown. And it's the unknown that feeds the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
My very first client, I won't mention their name, but if you're watching, hi. She's my first ever client, and struggling big time with imposter syndrome. She was probably one of the most, in her words, and I'm paraphrasing, one of the youngest female professionals in her space, and the most successful at what she does. And what she'd convinced herself of was that something must have given her a chance, or there was it had nothing to do with merit. It had nothing to do with how good she was. They were giving her a chance because she was a girl. These are her words, by the way. Or they were giving her a shot because she's, again, her words, on the attractive side. So she was convinced, or she'd convinced herself that that's why she'd climbed the ladder so far.
Yeah.
And we worked together for about 6 months. Back then I was doing more like executive leadership coaching when I first started.
Yeah.
And we covered imposter syndrome in great depth. And it boils down to a belief system and how we can convince ourselves, like it can't be me, it's got to be something else. And then the general I do it myself. I'm like, well, you, in fact, your compliments that you pay me on this call, I'm like, I don't think I feel that way about myself. But then I add this word at the end, which has helped me. Enough. I don't think I tell myself enough. And so what I've started doing, and I've Post-it notes, which I'm not going to share with you because it's a mess behind this screen. But I have certain Post-it notes that I move around. And one of those words is enough with speech marks. And I oftentimes will put that on my own screen if I'm having a low day. Again, my meds calm the squirrels. They don't really mitigate entirely some of the challenges that I still have. And so this imposter syndrome will creep in every now and again. And I think it comes down to a level of self-doubt based on confidence, your abilities, and the rewards that come from that. So I like to remind people, including myself, that you're exactly where you are today because of the work that you put in. And no one can really take that away from you. So just, kind of like self-reflection work. And yeah, this is going to sound real corny, but mantra work. I'm not a terribly religious person, but I do take certain parts from certain houses of religion. And I have a deep respect for religion and what it teaches. But yeah, meditation's been really helpful for me. So like, I'm on like the Buddhism track right now. Not officially, but really trying to pull from that, the power of meditation for the most part has been really helpful for me. And I think that allows me to self-reflect and just, look at it from a factual perspective versus an emotional perspective. But yeah, I have imposter syndrome every single day. And I've just boiled it down to the fact that it's part of my day. It's another personality that I have to, I can choose to either act on or not. Yeah. But it's something I don't hold. And it's so easy. It might sound easy that me saying that out loud, because a lot of people listening to this will go, he has no idea. He doesn't know me. And I get that. And I don't, these things, I think it's about discovery, Erin, and maybe surrounding yourself with people that'll like you. And I'm talking about ADHD now. And I think one of the biggest benefits over medication and therapy has been kind of warming up to other people that are struggling. And I mentioned Clay and Thomas, who I hold in very high regard. Bringing others that are struggling like I am closer to me is, I'm telling you, it's been extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
So how can people with ADHD leverage, because I always think people with ADHD have superpowers, you know, so how can they leverage their unique strengths, your unique strengths in job applications and interviews? So how can, you have this, how do you use those strengths of ADHD in the application process, in the job search process? What do you use when you are coaching?
Another great question. So I think, and you'll know this probably more than I do. I think a large or a key component for job search or a successful job search is research. And I don't think it's going to sound like I'm bragging, and I probably am a little bit. I don't know anybody else who's as good as research as me. I don't. I dive in. I like it. It's an innate switch, but the switch of hyperfocus comes in. Yeah. And I can sit and research.
Is that a common ADHD symptom? Hyperfocus, like
for me at least, yeah. Maybe it affects other people differently, or maybe some people don't have hyperfocus. But part of my issue with pre-diagnosed or pre-coping skill treatment diagnosis was how to pull away from hyperfocus, and I think hyperfocus in spurts can be really powerful. I guess let's use the word powerful. So if I'm doing every single client that I sign on or hires me, I do like a ton of deep research on them, and I actually enjoy it. So social channels, meeting notes, their employments, who they worked at. I research the companies they've worked at, and I enjoy that. But before, when I didn't really know how to pull away, I could spend an hour and a half doing that. Yeah. And I look at my watch, I'm like. And then I remember, like, I'm dying to go to the bathroom, like, and I forgot. Yeah. I forgot to go to the bathroom, or I just researched through lunch. So now I set timers for everything. If I could show you my iOS alarm screen, I won't. But I have an alarm for everything.
On that note, because you and I talked about timers, and can you let our listeners know some of the apps that you use that really help with setting timers and staying on track? Yeah.
So I use, that's a really good question. I'm still kind of like feeling my way. Okay. So one app that I use for my clients is an app called Todoist, and there's a free option. It's pretty limited. So I use Todoist to stay on top of my, I use it kind of like a static CRM. I do have a robust CRM that I use for client work, but for notes and reminders, I use it as a static kind of, how I go through the framework of my packages, and it has a really good reminder system. It has an incredible iOS app. So like for me, an application has to have incredible synergy between desktop and mobile. It has to, otherwise I don't use it. It's a hard and fast rule. And I've tried. I think you and I spoke about this a little while ago. I've tried Trello. I've tried. Yeah,
you said Asana.
I've tried. Yeah, and this is a me thing, and maybe others who have ADHD might agree. And I even medicated. I can't look at something so powerful and not feel overwhelmed. Yeah. So I've started to like let simplicity kind of flow over me. Some like the Buddhism kind of coming back in here. So I've been using this like really. I'm sorry if you're if the app developer for this app ever watches this, I'm going to say I'm sorry for calling your app ugly. But it's not a pretty app. It's called Galarm, which is alarm spelled with the G in the front.
Oh, okay.
It's free. It's amazing. It's super simple. And I like it because I can set custom snooze alarms, which is really cool. It also has like a 3 and done. It works. It's super simple. It's iOS. I don't use a desktop version, but it keeps me on track. I use it for everything, Erin. I mean,
So you only use it on your phone?
Yeah, I have 18 alarm. This is just for personal stuff. I use it for personal only. I use Todoist for work, and I use Galarm for personal. And I have 17 alarms on there, including, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, including wakey, wakey, 6:30, 7 o'clock, meds, 7:30, coffee done. Like
I love it. No, it
throughout the
keeps you
whole
organized
day.
and on track. I mean,
I
really.
have to remind myself sometimes to eat lunch because
Yeah.
it's super common for me to get to 4 or 5 o'clock, and then my 5 o'clock pick up Olivia alarm's going off, and I'm like, why is my stomach rumbling? I didn't eat lunch. And I know that sounds weird, and I think it is a bit weird, but yeah, I'll forget to eat lunch. So yeah, Galam is like my favorite. Galam is my favorite personal reminder. I'm looking through my apps right now to Todoist, and look, and I'm going to give another shout out to people who, if that's okay with you, I want to give a shout out to my friend Kate Sitsenko, who is, I think she's over in Cyprus. She's on LinkedIn. Follow her. Kate was the one that gave me the nudge on Todoist when I was kind of like in the weeds of, Trello, and she was like, try Todoist. I'm like, okay. And it's been really great for me. It's powerful but simple, and it's color codable, and I'm very visual, so it's been easy. So yeah, Todoist for client work.
Okay.
And Galam.
Alarm.
It's a weird name too. Almost sounds like Gollum, but yeah, it's not a pretty looking app. It's probably going to go into a subfolder because you're not going to want to look at it. But it's been really cool.
Hey, well, once somebody lands their job,
Yep.
Somebody with ADHD, they land their job.
Mm-hmm.
So are there, what are some strategies that for advocating their needs in the workplace? I mean, and also are there companies, can they identify certain companies and work environments that actually do support neurodivergent employees? I mean, I guess those are two different things, but asking, seeing if their employers help, and then I guess you would really have to search looking for someone, a company that is neurodivergent friendly, supportive.
That's such a good question. And I think I'm still trying to understand that from a higher perspective, almost like even from a personal, outlook. But look, if I were looking for a job, or if I landed a job and my first day was, Monday coming, the things that I would have done personally would have been to look, and some companies add this to their websites. There are ways for you to, there's an easy search you can do on LinkedIn to look at people who've worked at past company, and past company is the firm that you're researching. So let's say I was looking to join, let's say I got called by a recruiter to go and work at BlackRock, and in their recruiting team, right? Or their L&D department. So I would look on LinkedIn. I did this. It's super simple. I would look and I would run a real simple search on people that used to work at BlackRock, and then kind of delineate those results into something like maybe it's HR or L&D, and then network with those people to kind of like, hey, what was it like working there? Yeah. That takes time. So, research is not the night before type of thing. Better than anybody, Erin. I think, an effective job search takes time, and it's something that not a lot of people have. And I truly empathize with that. But I would research those firms that have programs, or they advocate for groups that that support neurodivergence in the workplace as a whole. And then, just kind of like take it from there and dig around a little bit. But I think there's a lot of responsibility on us to do the legwork. Yeah. As well as companies leaning into creating a support system, or at least accommodations. And, I see a lot of content daily throughout UK, Europe, US, and about companies and accommodations for neurodivergent professionals. And I think, for me, if I went back, if Monday was my back to corporate gig, I'm gonna have to be careful when I say this because it's a really delicate topic. I'd like to think that I would feel comfortable enough to have opened up in my interview process. Again, it's kind of like a read the room situation, right? Right. I probably wouldn't do it on my first interview, but like when I'm like, 2 to 3 in and I'm feeling comfortable, I'd like to think I'd have the courage. Again, it's kind of,
it is. You
read the room, right? It's like, when do you drop that in? It's like, well, whenever it feels comfortable. So if there was a situation where I felt comfortable opening up about accommodations or possible accommodations that could be made by them for someone with someone struggling with some of my traits, if you will, what kind of accommodations could they have? For example, one thing that I do during the day, during work time, or like the 2 hours or the hour and a half that I engage across LinkedIn every morning, is noise canceling headphones. And it has been night and day game changing, Erin. So
Really?
if I were going to work, if I was going to an actual job, I would, I think asking for accommodations is acceptable. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. I don't think I'm well versed enough to speak to the legalities of, the Americans with Disabilities Act and that kind of coverage. So I don't know if I'm qualified to have that kind of conversation. And I certainly don't want to come across that I'm well versed in that, because I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be. But I think there are protections in place that can support accommodations for people with ADHD. Some of the struggles that we have can be mitigated with little impact to the day-to-day running of a business. Now, if you're in sales and your job is to be on the phone every day, I don't know if noise canceling headphones would be a great option. But let's say you're, a UX designer, or I don't know, right? So, I think it's such a good topic, Erin, that I'm fascinated by ADHD, and I'm fascinated by the entire topic. So,
let me ask this. Do you think that people should here's the other thing, another question I had. Along those lines, do you think people should hold off? Do you think there's a bias? Do you think they should wait until they're in?
Yeah, there's always a bias, man. Yeah.
Do you think they should wait till they're offered the role and then just kind of sneak it in there or start putting their headphones? Or do you think that they should, I guess like you said, read the room, see how the company is, and hopefully people are doing their research to see if it is a more neurodiverse friendly company. But
me personally,
you just lie about it, and I don't know. I guess.
I'm gonna displease half of your audience, right? And I've gone through life trying to please everybody, and those with ADHD watching this, you'll know what I mean when I refer to masking and trying to fit in and people please. It's a massive ADHD trait, and wanting to be wanted, or wanting to be liked. Yeah. Everyone is a very lonely kid at school. I don't know if I tried to mask, and I masked very poorly at school. Just didn't think I had the ability to fake it, to try and fit in. But as an adult, I'd like to think that I would be upfront about it. And that's just me. There are other people, I've seen it, I've read it, I've heard it, and they'll do it after the fact. And I think it's disingenuous. And that's probably going to piss a lot of people off. And I appreciate that. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And what I'm saying is not going to make everybody happy. But I get that. But, that's life. And I grew up in an environment, a home environment, where I was, drilled into me, treat others how they would want to treat you. And it's just stuck with me. Like, I'm not a magician. I'm not like, different than anybody else, you and people watching this. So I'd like to think that I do the right thing. And in my mind, doing the right thing would be to do the research, have a conversation, and open that up. Because for the most part, and if without getting too technical, ADHD and various other neurodivergent challenges are invisible. I use the word invisible.
Yes.
It's
other people forget about it, or it is.
I have friends who are I have friends who are, obviously, I don't want to sound disrespectful when I say this. I'm trying to choose my words. They're disabled by their outward stature, or they're perceivably disabled. I'm trying to be really respectful here with my words. Whereas, mental health challenges are not always visible, unless you're seeing a symptom and you understand where that symptom may come from.
Yes.
You know what it is, Erin? For me, from education comes empathy. And I think if you can educate a potential employer, best case scenario, they're already educated and they already kind of it's like, you can even bring that up in an interview. It's like, oh, I understand you have this and this, or you're associated with ADA, or I see I see your head of marketing. They're an admin for this LinkedIn group. And I was like, these things all come down to research. And I think if you go into an interview really, really prepped,
you should be
I don't
anyway.
think bringing that up would be so awkward. Yeah. So
yeah.
But I don't think leaving it until after the fact is the right thing to do, because then you
springing it on them, and then they're like, "What?" And then it just creates some dishonesty.
You know this as a parent. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, once you lie, you can't unlie. So I think I'm too risk averse to lie, to get myself, the rug pulled from underneath me. So yeah, look, if I'm gonna get hurt, it's because I told the truth. That's my motto.
I love that. Yeah, that's how it should be.
So
if someone listening right now feels stuck in their job search, they have ADHD, maybe they think that that's part of it. What should their first step should they take today?
Step away from your resume.
That's a good one.
Step away from your resume. Look, Erin, you've been doing this longer than I have. I've looked up to you, and we've shared. You belong to a subset of people that I immediately gravitated towards when I first jumped on. You, Steve, Shelley, Virginia. The name, and people.
Yeah.
You know how much I love you guys.
Yeah.
You welcomed me with open arms, and I feel forever grateful and privileged. When someone loses a job or is laid off, or they're at work and like, my boss has just gone over the line too many times, and I'm talking about my old self too, straight to the resume. I'm going to fix my resume. I'm going to work on my resume. It's like, stop, take a step back, wait till you get home, have a cup of tea, however you relax, listen to some music, and then think about what you want to do next, because it might not be what you currently do. And I'm talking about career clarity, and it's, plastered across everyone's LinkedIn feeds, and some advice is kind of ambiguous. Some advice, like yours and Shelley's and Matt's and everyone else that I, hold in pretty high regard, is really valuable and really helpful.
Yeah.
And looking back, when my mentor said, what's the one thing about your career if you couldn't do again in your next job? Like, what was the one thing you would disappoint the most? Like, for me, it was about job seekers, and kind of like building on that notion of like, okay, so how else could I help job seekers if it's not recruiting? Coaching, L&D, HR is a larger umbrella. But getting really clear on what you want to do next is super crucial, because, not every coach, I think, teaches the same thing. But as far as framework and as far as the steps necessary, like I've been a full desk agency recruiter since 1999. Nothing's changed. It's of course with the advent of LinkedIn, but it's resume, LinkedIn, interview availability. That's it. 3 steps.
But first, clarity.
I'm talking about from a hiring manager's perspective or a recruiter's perspective. They see the resume, they'll open up your LinkedIn, and they're calling you for interview availability. That's never changed. But what's really fundamentally changed is that, jobs have become so, I think the job market's become so saturated with, especially now with, the advent of AI and how easy it is to apply for work now, that visibility has become really, really important. And, we see the word networking and visibility and engagement on LinkedIn all the time. And maybe some people don't really know what that means, but ultimately, career clarity and where you truly want to be next, it feeds everything that comes from that. So like, with the work that I do with my clients, clarity comes first, period. And if somebody comes to me, for example, they want a resume tweak, I won't, and I say this respectfully, I refuse to not work on someone's resume if that's all they need. Or if someone comes to me for a LinkedIn refresh, I'm like, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I used to, and I think it's good. I think it's good work. I think we can be really helpful by doing that, but it's not, I don't believe that's the right first step. It's about really identifying or showing my clients what's available to them versus, the old ways of, okay, here's my resume. I'm going to Boolean search career builder, LinkedIn, Monster. And I'm really good at that. And I'm going to pull down, I'm going to file, I've got an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to apply to roles. I'm going to tweak every single resume. I'm going to do everything that I've been told to do. And that's great. That's great. But now you've applied to 20 different jobs.
Right.
And now you got to have, maybe 20 different styles or types of interviews, and it can get really overwhelming. And for someone with ADHD, overwhelm is not a place, that's not a troll you want to feed. And I find that getting really clear on what you want from a super linear perspective too, Erin. And some people have an issue with that, but I found with ADHD, or specifically with me and the clients I work with ADHD, bringing it down to a point or a single digit suite of what's available to them really removes all that overwhelm. Because you and I both know a lot of our clients can do a dozen different jobs, and that's what they do on their own. They, in Monster and Carilda, they're applying to a dozen different types of jobs because they know they can do it. Yeah. So I try and flip it and say, well, what do you really want to do? What did you want to do as a kid? What did you dream about when you were a kid? Who do you feel happiest around?
Right.
What do you do when you're not working? What do you do at the weekends? One of the questions I like to ask is, what's the first name of your best friend? And I'll say Erin. And I'll say, if I called Erin right now and asked her what she thought you'd be best doing for a living, what would she say?
Oh, that's a good
And the
one.
answers are amazing because it's usually nothing that they've ever done. Right. So I take all those notes, and once we've kind of gone through identifying, and I have my clients run through a Clifton Strengths analysis, which is really, really revealing. I've taken 2 of them. I'm like, oh, wow. And then I create this career path report for them. I just delivered a client his yesterday. And it nails it. And it's helping them. Honestly, I think job search ultimately, Erin, is a confidence play versus a skills or experience play. I really do. And I feel if you have the runway to do it, and you have the stamina to kind of change your habits. And I think my style works best. I say this sensitively. I think it works best for those that are currently employed, not between jobs. I felt the stress of what it feels like between jobs. And I don't know if, a 6 to 8 week coaching course is the right thing.
When
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm super
Yeah.
sensitive to that. And I'd rather refer those people to recruiters that I know that I'm really well networked with to get them back into work. So I think that's really important. But clarity is key, because from really understanding and having the confidence in knowing what you want to do and how to get there, it's not just really about showing them what's available to them. It's also showing them why this is available, which helps them kind of realize that, wow, this expertise, I didn't realize it leveraged into this.
Yeah.
I also then show them how to get there. So the steps necessary to achieve that. And then once they have that, this feels good, right? Or like mic drop moments. Okay, great. Let's put clarity to one side, sleep on it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my calendar link. Let's schedule another call to kind of unpack this again. And then we go on to resume. And the resume is built from scratch based on clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So then the resume is built out and it's aligned to everything that they've done. Nothing's made up. Nothing's fabricated. Everything on that resume is designed in a way to extrapolate everything that's leverageable into the role that they actually want. And then from there, it's LinkedIn, and we build out the LinkedIn, and there's this cohesive story, right?
Yeah.
And who loves a good story? Recruiters and hiring managers. I think one of the biggest travesties in job search is how job seekers have convinced themselves that they'll figure it out. They'll know what I want to do. And it's, look, take it for someone who was an agency recruiter for almost 20 years. We don't have time. And I say that with absolute empathy. We just don't have time. And, recruiters, especially on the agency side, are corporate side, also, I don't want to get into trouble by saying that, but recruiting, if it's a busy desk, you don't have time to figure it out. And you definitely don't have time to respond to a resume and say, did you mean this? No, it either fits or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, it's gone. And it's as I know it sounds really brutal, but recruiting is a really fast game of match. And if it doesn't match, no one's going in for a do-over thinking, did they mean this? So meeting recruiters and hiring managers where they're at is really, really crucial. So anyway, that clarity and the cohesion is really, really important. Again, it's kind of, you're feeding that confidence, right? So as they move through their process of getting clear on what they really want to do, I love that idea. Let's build a resume. Oh my gosh, wow, now I can actually start sending these out to roles that I really want.
Yeah.
Now I've got the LinkedIn piece, and then I teach them how to network effectively by building target audiences and then drawing that audience back to their LinkedIn profile and closing the loop. That's it. It's it.
It's a
Clarity is the
system.
key, because if you're not clear, look, this is going to sound obvious to a lot of people, but if you're not clear on what you want to do, your resume and LinkedIn are not going to follow suit, right?
Will help you. If you don't know what you want to do, that's not going to help you.
I'm sorry, that
All
was
right,
really wordy.
David. No. This was great. This was really great. So how would someone get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I guess LinkedIn, really. Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. LinkedIn. My website, pathfinder.coach.
Right.
And yeah, my clients can text me at the weekend. But yeah, kidding aside, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Look, you and I probably spend way too long on LinkedIn, but I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day.
Trying not to. I've been trying to cut down my LinkedIn time because I
respond to all DMs within 24 hours. I do it personally, and no shade, but I don't have a VA. It's all me. I might have to start delegating because I've gotten really busy, which I'm super grateful for. It's not a bad problem to have, but yeah, everything's me. And I also want to add that all the work that I do with my clients, it's all me. I don't outsource anything. I don't outsource resume writing. I think it's really important to work super deep with clients on that. All the design components, like I'm really, really familiar with Photoshop and Canva and Lightroom, and I'm a former professional photographer, so I know a little thing about aesthetics, and typefaces and Pantones and blah blah blah. I'm boring myself, but I do. The LinkedIn whole redesign is done by me too, so I don't outsource anything. So yeah, people can reach me through LinkedIn or through my website. Yeah. My DMs are open too, so I have, and you probably have the same thing. I have LinkedIn Premium, and I have an open profile, so anyone who wants to reach out to me, they don't need to use an email. They can just send me a DM openly.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I have one last question for you that we ask our guests. So, what's something that people don't know about you? Maybe something that you love to do, or that's something we just don't know about you.
So I'm just going to tell you what I love to do, and I don't really talk a lot about it, but if you've known me long enough, you know that I do this. So when I can, and which is it's not as often now with a 5-year-old, but I try and spend my weekends in the woods. I spent a lot of 2013 through hiking the Appalachian Trail. As I mentioned to you before you and I got on this call, after school, I used to kind of try and lose myself. We had a woodland close to my mom's house where we grew up, and I used to go to the woods almost every night. We'd make dens and we'd stick fights and stuff like that. But I'd spend a lot of my time in the woods, and looking back, I think I just enjoyed being on my own. And so now as an adult, I spend a lot of time when I can on the trail, backpack, and I don't sleep in a tent anymore. And I switched to hammock backpacking about 12, 13 years ago. So
really? So you just sleep in the hammock?
Yeah, even in the wintertime. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just 2 trees. And
in the wintertime? I was going to say, what about rain?
Yeah.
No, you don't care. You just
I actually like it when it rains and snows.
Wow.
It's just that, that there's a protective tarp over my hammock, so it's nice. So I'll sit there and listen to the rain. But yeah, I do that for fun. I do it for exercise. I think I'd be in far worse physical shape if I didn't at 53. So yeah, I love to be in the woods, Erin. I do. There's just something pretty special about the side.
Or is it just a solo trip?
No, we had a bit of a bear incident about, I want to say 7-8 years ago. I'll keep this short. We were in a local state park up here in New York, and we were hiking. We went off trail a little bit, and she saw this dark figure moving about in the bushes. I want to say 300 yards, pretty far. And I'll never forget. She's like, "Honey, is that a deer?" And I looked over, and I knew right away. It's sweet, that's a bear.
Oh my God!
And it was just watching us. And thankfully here in black. So thankfully here on the East Coast, certainly here in New York, we really only get black bears. They're pretty docile unless you don't treat them with respect. But yeah, she hasn't really come out since. But yeah, my wife is 10 times fitter than I am. She's a cross. No, my wife's an absolute maniac. She's a CrossFitter. She's in incredible shape. Never drank, never smoked, eats healthy. I'm a little bit envious, but no, she'll come out for like day hikes and things like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to when my daughter's name is Olivia. I'm looking forward to Olivia getting a little bit older. We talk about it sometimes about her coming out with dad, on an overnight maybe. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, the woods is where I feel. I guess for my brain, I feel safe in the woods. I feel mentally safe, if that makes sense, in the woods. And it makes more sense to me saying that now after my diagnosis than before. I always felt that way, but I didn't know why I was saying the word safe. I just feel safe out there.
It's peaceful and
I feel really connected with me, which is a nice place. And now my brain's a little quieter. My squirrel's a little more calm. I can now enjoy the real squirrels in the woods. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Thanks for asking. What about you? What's something about you that we don't know, Erin? Has anyone turned that mic back to you?
No one has done that.
Can you share?
I can share. Well, one thing, maybe some people know, but I'm a huge canner. So I have a big garden every year, and I used to be even more, but I can, jellies, but now it's like salsa, really spicy salsa.
Really? Wait, do you grow your own jalapenos and things like that?
Yeah.
No way. Okay.
Garden, I grow all the hot ones. Lots of Roma tomatoes because they're the best for salsa. Then I also have really been getting into heirloom tomatoes and just bigger, juicy kinds of tomatoes. I even made this year, it was amazing, my own homemade V8 juice. And it is so good. It is the best I've ever had. Yeah. So
is there any way that I can get a jar of your salsa shipped over here to New York? I'm a salsa nut. I really am.
Yes,
the spicier the better. Yeah.
You're just gonna have to make a trip to Michigan, I think.
Yeah. All right.
You can try my VH.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. But thanks so much for coming on. This is
an absolute privilege. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thanks again.
Thanks again for listening to the Office Latte Podcast. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and TikTok at Executive Resumes, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Office Latte Podcast. If you have any career questions or conversations you want us to talk about, send them to officelattepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll answer them in an upcoming show. Have a great week and stay caffeinated.